We've looked at the Simpsons' past. We've looked at their present day. Now it's time to break out those tarot cards, mystic fireballs, and time machines and look at the Simpsons' future. So far, they've done several glimpses into the characters' futures and where they end up. Sometimes they're consistent, sometimes they contradict themselves. Sometimes they make Homer a robot. So let's see if we can figure out what actually happens to everyone. However, unlike the other two videos, this one isn't really a question of how does the Simpsons' future work? No, this time we're looking at the Simpsons canon. The real question is, does any of this actually happen? Okay, before we get started, let's get this disclaimer out of the way. The Simpsons is a cartoon, so any further analysis will be viewed through the lens of cartoon logic. The writers will do whatever they want, and therefore will play fast and loose with the continuity. This is more or less a discussion on why an animated sitcom does what it does, and if there are any common threads we can discern from these episodes. Ask a doctor if this video is right for you. So, The Simpsons' future. Oh, thank God we've made it to The Simpsons' future. Unlike the past, which has over 20 episodes covering it, and the present, which covers like 95% of the show, they visit the future in only 6 episodes, with a few more random glimpses hidden in other ones. So this one will probably be a little less convoluted than the other two videos. Saved easiest for last, I suppose. For this discussion, we'll be looking at the following episodes, listed in chronological order. Not air date, but the order they occur in the characters' lives. First comes the episode BARTHOOD. It extends through the events of Future Drama and Lisa's wedding. Then we go to Holidays of Future Past, Days of Future Future, and finish with Bart to the Future. Wow, they use the word future a lot in these titles. They should just call the next one Future of Future Future. I blame Matt Groening. Furthermore, we're gonna set Days of Future Future aside for now, and deal with it later. If you've seen this episode, you probably know why. There are 2 main groups of future stories, so in the recap for these, we're going to split it in half. First, we're going to look at what happens to Homer and Marge, and then we're going to look at where the kids end up. Quick spoiler warning in advance for these episodes, since we're going to be detailing key aspects about them. So without further ado, Homer and Marge get together in the 1970s or whenever, and remain married through the events of BARTHOOD. Homer has trouble connecting with his son. Marge goes off to camp with Lisa, while Homer stays home with 15-year-old Bart. When Bart throws a house party, Homer gets high with Chief Wiggum. A couple years later, Homer and Marge separate temporarily. This happens when both kids are about to graduate high school, with Marge living at Evergreen Terrace, while Homer has taken residency under the water. Finally, he did it! Marge begins dating Krusty the Clown. Homer picks a fight with him, gets beaten up, and Marge takes him back out of pity. Because that's how their dynamic works. They remain together through the events of Lisa's wedding, with Homer still at his old job. Homer eventually scares away Hugh Parkfield with his cufflinks, and Lisa breaks off the wedding. Bart continues living with his parents until his mid-30s, when Homer and Marge finally kick him out. When the kids visit for Christmas, Marge helps Lisa with her parenting issues. Homer bonds with his 2 grandsons. He introduces them to, Great-Grandpa Simpson, who is frozen in a cryogenic tube. He delivers the heartwarming moral of the episode. When Lisa becomes president of the United States, Homer and Marge visit her at the White House. Homer looks for Abraham Lincoln's buried treasure. Because the spirits thought the main story was a little thin. And there you have it. Pretty straightforward for these two, really. Homer and Marge have a relatively happy marriage, except for their separation during the kids' high school years. And there's not really a lot more to be said. It's funny, for a show where Homer Simpson is the quote-unquote main character, he's really not that relevant for the future episodes. Future episodes are all about the kids. They're a chance to see what Bart and Lisa and Maggie become. Homer and Marge end up sliding into the background, and we don't learn as much about them. In fact, there is an argument to be made that we learn more about Kearney in these episodes than Homer and Marge. I'm not kidding. Kearney becomes vice principal at the high school and officiates Bart and Lisa's senior prom. His son graduates the same time as the Simpsons kids, and he ends up meeting his grandson at Milhouse's graduation party. He quits his school job and becomes a cabbie, driving a very pregnant Maggie Simpson to the hospital. He goes in to make sure she is able to get a room. He probably uses this family connection to get a job in the Secret Service, working for Lisa when she becomes president. Close family confidant, that Kearney. Also, he may or may not have been a criminal in a dream sequence in an alternate timeline. See? I told you. The Kearney timeline is super deep. He is the key to figuring everything out. Anyway, on to Bart, Lisa, and Maggie, a much more tangled and confusing mess, because now we gotta bring in a lot of the other kids. Jenda, Milhouse, Nelson, even Ralph Wiggum and Sherry and Terry to a degree. So we'll knock all of them out at once. So for the last time... As a young child, Bart is very close to his grandpa. He has a rivalry with his sister Lisa, who he views as his parents' favorite child. At a young age, Lisa creates the sailboat painting hanging over the couch. At the age of 12, Bart and Milhouse go around breaking streetlights. Milhouse gets arrested and is sent to a juvenile hall, while Bart is given a cool bike by Grandpa. When Lisa turns 13, she goes off to a Mayo Clinic summer camp with Marge. Bart, now 15 years old, throws a house party. He makes out with Sherry, who he mistakes for Terry. Milhouse attends the party, who is now buff from being in juvie. After an argument with Homer, Bart goes to visit Grandpa's grave. Grandpa presumably died sometime between when Bart was 12 and 15 years old. The following year, Bart gets really popular in the world of BMX. He crashes during a stunt, which causes Lisa, thanks to her medical knowledge, to resuscitate him. All of this stuff is covered in BARTHOOD. Moving over to future drama, Bart and Lisa are now high school seniors, with Lisa skipping 2 grades. Lisa is currently dating Milhouse, and Bart is dating a girl named Jenda. Nelson hooks up with both Sherry and Terry, getting both of them pregnant. Lisa receives the Montgomery Burns Scholarship so she can go to Yale. After the prom, Bart proclaims his love for Jenda, which doesn't go super great. Jenda breaks up with Bart, and Lisa dumps Milhouse off screen. Homer, currently on the rebound, takes Bart to Moe's bar to hit on his old teachers, which is gross, and very confusing. Bart works at the Quickie Mart, saves Mr. Burns during a delivery, and accidentally steals Lisa's scholarship. Jenda gets back together again with him, now that he has a stable future ahead of him. Bart throws a graduation party at Homer's underwater house. Sherry and Terry both have twins, which causes Nelson, naturally, to freak out and abandon them. After graduation, Lisa considers getting back together with Milhouse, now that she's stuck at home. Bart swoops in and gives her back the scholarship, saving Lisa from marrying Milhouse someday. Afterwards, in another episode, the Van Houtens throw a graduation party for Milhouse. Ralph Wiggum attends, revealing that he is joining the military. Lisa is still going to Yale, but she opts to be sweet to Milhouse anyway, giving him a kiss. Around this time, Bart has been working as a caricaturist near the beach. Also, Nelson may or may not have sold his pituitary gland. Lisa goes off to Yale. She meets Hugh Parkfield, falls in love with him, and they get engaged. Bart, meanwhile, is working in the demolition industry, getting his aggression out before he goes to law school. Milhouse is working at the Springfield nuclear power plant as Homer's supervisor. Maggie Simpson is now in high school and is ready to show off her beautiful singing voice. Lisa's engagement to Hugh does not work out in the end. A couple years later, Bart opens a bike shop named for his deceased grandfather. Lisa has finished college, going into the medical field. She invented an artificial pituitary gland for her boyfriend Nelson. They visit Bart at his shop, and Lisa discovers the beautiful mural he painted about her. Okay, Barthood is finally done. Years later, Lisa and Milhouse eventually marry. They have a daughter named Zia. Maggie has parlayed her beautiful singing voice into a successful music career and is pregnant with her first child. Bart marries Jenda, and they have 2 sons with secretive names. Unfortunately, Bart and Jenda's marriage doesn't work out, and they divorce. Bart is living in an apartment at the old Springfield Elementary. Both Bart and Lisa decide to visit their parents for Christmas, since both of them have trouble connecting with their kids. In the treehouse, Lisa asks Bart if she should have married Nelson instead. Eventually, Lisa and Bart reconcile with their kids, via the internet and a cryogenics lab visit. Maggie is trying to make it home, but goes into labor on the way there. She shows up at the end of the episode with their new baby daughter. Bart eventually moves out of Springfield Elementary and starts living with Ralph Wiggum. They are in a band together. Meanwhile, Nelson is now a business owner, inviting them to play at Nelson's Crab House. Lisa becomes president of the United States, the first straight female president. Milhouse is acting as Lisa's chief of staff. The country is broke, owing billions of dollars to foreign creditors. Bart comes to visit, totally embarrasses her, but saves the day in the end, because the other countries are pushovers and are easily peer pressured. It's a dumb episode, just go with it. When Bart turns 50, he has become Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, presumably going to law school like he previously mentioned. Perhaps his connection with his sister got him a foot in the door. He and Homer finally see Itchy and Scratchy the movie. Okay, now Barthood is done, at least thematically. And finally, thousands of years later, Cyborg Mr. Burns finally tracks down his beloved teddy bear Bobo. Excellent. It was much longer and much more detailed, but there it is. That's the future history of the Simpsons family. The problem? All of it might not actually happen. See, the thing about these future episodes is that they may or may not be considered canon. This whole concept of what is canon and what isn't is really nebulous. Because it's not like the writers put a banner at the beginning of the episodes that say, hey, this one doesn't count. We all know the Treehouse of Horror episodes aren't canon by their very nature. Homer doesn't get permanently trapped in the third dimension. And then you can infer that stuff like the Family Guy or the Futurama crossovers might not count as well. And then the Kang and Kodos episode, if you want to throw that one in too. Which was, by the way, predicted by Professor Frink's machine in Futurama. Man, that guy is good. I look forward to the episode where Flanders stabs Homer to death. Just in general, the future episodes run into a bit of a reliability problem. Like, the present-day events of Lisa's wedding probably happens, and the family does indeed go to a Renaissance fair. But can we really say for sure that this fortune teller actually knows anything? I don't want to suggest something about the world of tarot or fortune tellers, but perhaps she's making the whole thing up, or the cards are just wrong. Same with the casino owner or Professor Frink's machine. I will give the casino guy some credit though, since he was somehow able to predict the President Trump thing. So while it's tempting to write this vision off as mysticism, that specific detail is making me arch my eyebrows just a little bit. Really, the only episode that is a straight-up flash forward is Holidays of Future Past. And even that one isn't considered canon by the Simpsons Wiki. I'm actually not really sure why for this example. There's no prediction or vision of the future in it. The photos just seem to imply this is what's gonna happen. And then with Jenda in the episode, it sort of implies that future drama is real as well. And then there's the episode Days of Future Future. In that one, Homer basically dies in the present day. But this isn't a problem because Professor Frink cloned him. Homer dies over and over again just to be cloned over and over again, until finally living in a computer at Bart's apartment. This future stuff is supposed to happen right after Holiday of Future Past. Homer later gets a robot body, and Milhouse becomes a zombie, which Lisa is actually into. Okay, this episode is really weird. So unless you're going to operate under the theory that all these Homers in the future are just clones and we didn't know it at the time, we have to throw this episode out. Maybe it happens, I don't know. It just seems really strange to me. Maybe this is one of those split timeline situations we talked about a while back. Really, the whole canon debate is obviously up to personal opinion. We can be super literal and say all of it counts, say none of it counts, or we can pick and choose. But here's the way that I look at them. I view the future episodes as being legends. Future legends, if you will. I don't think a super literal approach makes a ton of sense because of all the tiny little inconsistencies that litter the episode. Obviously, the writers weren't mapping any of this out in advance or anything, they're just kind of making it up as they go along. When they wrote Lisa's wedding, for example, they couldn't have known that Maud Flanders and Edna Krabappel would pass away. Same thing applies to Edna's appearance in future drama. But even the stuff established in the future episodes get contradicted in later ones. Holiday's A Future Past has Grandpa in a cryogenic tube in the distant future, but BARTHOOD reveals that he died when Bart was a teenager. Totally contradictory, right? Doesn't seem like both episodes can exist at the same time. But that's the nature of legends. The nitty-gritty details get messed up or confused, but the overarching story still makes sense. It's not like the writers do one future where Lisa goes to culinary school and another one where she joins the military. No. Once they decide on something for the main storyline, they stick to it. In Lisa's wedding, she's going to an Ivy League school on the East Coast. In future drama, it's revealed she got a scholarship to Yale. In BARTHOOD, she talks about it again. It seems pretty clear that, from the writer's point of view, Lisa goes to Yale. What is there really to debate? Maybe the events of these episodes don't happen exactly as portrayed on screen, but it seems pretty likely that Lisa goes to Yale someday. The dirty little secret about The Simpsons is that, as much as the writers make fun of this kind of thing, they actually do follow a loose continuity. They're not slaves to it or anything, but they don't start from scratch every time they do a new episode. They're not writing Scooby-Doo episodes here. It's not 1975 anymore. They're still writing a cartoon, obviously, that disclaimer still applies. But it's structured like a sitcom, one with actual characters with actual histories. It's not a coincidence that Jenda appears in two different versions of Bart's future. It's not a coincidence that Maggie is shown to be a talented singer in two of them. It's not a coincidence that Lisa is always in and out of a relationship with Milhouse. Well, when she's not dating Nelson. Actually, I think I like Lisa and Nelson together more. Does that make me a bad person? I feel like Lisa would rather be with someone strong-willed. But enough about shipping. We'll talk about my old Selma and Mo theory some other time. Since the posting of the Simpsons Present video and receiving a surprising amount of feedback about it, I've been thinking about what the purpose of an exercise like this one is. We've done 3 episodes about timelines now, spanning something like 45 minutes on the topic as a whole. It's easy to come to the conclusion that this is just a wee bit of overkill on this particular subject. Some of it is just because it's silly fun, trying to put everything in order and see what it looks like. I feel like this discussion of the future gets at why I think The Simpsons is a fascinating study in chronology, and why it's worth looking at. It's because The Simpsons continuity is messy, it is uncomfortable, it is all over the place. It alternates between being not important at all, and so important that every episode needs to be filled with specific callbacks, even if some of them don't make sense. It's flexible reality. The flexible reality is why the timeline floats, gets fixed, gets frozen in time, goes through a year-long loop, or even splits into different multiverses, or whatever cartoon logic theory you end up subscribing to. If you look at all these puzzle pieces individually at a micro level, you're inevitably going to find inconsistencies. The dog is going to eat some of the pieces. But if you look at them together, you ultimately get a vague image of who the characters were, who they are now, and where they're going. I joked about how the Supreme Court conclusion with Bart lines up with the themes established in BARTHOOD, but actually does fit with that theme when you think about all the issues Bart has with his father, even at a very young age. This wasn't done on purpose, obviously, but it still fits in with his character as a whole. We get a sense of why Bart turns out the way he does, and what really makes the character tick. The same argument could be made for Lisa. Maybe the reason why she ends up with Milhouse instead of Nelson is because she learned something from her engagement to Hugh. Maybe she doesn't want strong-willed anymore. I don't know, maybe. I don't want to get super psychological about a fictional character. But we know it happened to her, and is part of the grand painting of Lisa as a character. The Simpsons is one of the greatest shows of all time, and we've known these characters for almost 30 years. If we're not supposed to analyze and look into their backstories, then what's the point of analyzing any piece of fiction? Even if half the stuff was totally accidental on the part of the writers. The devil is in the details, even if it does lead to a rambly dissertation about comic book time. Maybe this video will be out of date by the series finale. Maybe the writers will just decide to retcon everything. Who knows? I look forward to finding out. Que sera, sera. Thanks for watching, everyone.